Yeah, you know me, I volunteer him for everything. So yeah, of course.
Thank you. You have been once again voluntold. All right.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
There is the amphibike driver.
Good evening.
Okay. Will you have any news for the good of the order this evening for the agenda?
Oh, nothing really important. I'm trying to make this thing do something, but most likely all it'll do is make smoke. So
What thing do you hope it will do?
hopefully it will allow me to directly charge my car off my solar array with nothing in between.
Power passing through that board?
Yes, basically it's about a 35 to 400 volt step up converter with other stuff designed to handle brownouts and varying incoming voltages and stuff. That's the power section. The brain is an Arduino.
Okay. A lot of solar inverters are rated for 360 volt input, some even 420.
Well, 40 volts, 30 to 40 is the input, 400 is the output. So
okay. Yeah, I run my biggest solar array at 360 volts.
Okay, yeah, I'm running a little lower than that. So
oh, they just flooded through the doors. Right on time. Okay, Kevin, let's do your thing.
Oyez, 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 all persons having business before this august body, unmute yourselves, you will be heard. The Honorable J. Donaway presiding, all rise. All sit. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Please remute yourselves. All right, we'll call this non-Christmas edition of SEVA together. Sorry, we had to dispense with our annual holiday festivities. We did get a taste of the season with our virtual Cars and No Coffee at the shop on November 21st. And I believe we had 6 cars in attendance and about 8 people, though, and a few more signed on remotely via the Zoom session. And even with such a small turnout, it's amazing the connections that can be made. We had one entrepreneur show up eager to make connections in the business. He's working on autonomous delivery vehicles. And we had a new hobbyist who had bought a dead electric blue conversion by Wayne in the Midwest of an S10. And he was powering it with a Chevy Bolt pack and preparing to convert a salvage Prius inverter into his battery charger. Very enterprising young man. Any other notes from that event? No. Okay. And I'll just tick off some agenda items that we'll get to after our keynote speaker. People, please start thinking we need a new vice president and a new treasurer. Grace is ending the end of her 2nd term, and Brian has more interesting pursuits going on. So we will need a treasurer and a vice president nominee in January to be voted upon at our annual meeting in February. Grace will give us a policy update on the National Electrification Coalition this evening. There's also an election underway for the Electric Auto Association. You may recall that President Regine Fellows resigned before the end of her term, and that association is in a rebuilding phase once again, so it's important to vote in that election. It's apparently a contested board election for the first time in a while. We'll touch base on the Cultura bill, which was no gas cars after 2030 is the basic effect of that bill that they've been pushing for a few years. And after several years of debate. SEVA did endorse it last year, so they are listed as a reporter. Are listed as a supporter on the Cultura website. Tomorrow, there is a meeting of the Autonomous Connected Electric and Shared Mobility Coalition, their annual meeting with some pretty pedigreed speakers online from 3 to 5 p.m. tomorrow. And we can talk some more about our event at the shop on the 21st. And Andrea has been working on a survey of SEVA member services and satisfaction to focus our efforts in the coming year. And hopefully she's not signed on yet. She will and give us, there she is, yes, the latest update on that survey. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our keynote, Gibran Sabaya. And I met Gibran as we meet everyone else online these days. He was seeking some secondhand parts for a gasser in a junkyard when he just happened to spy an unusually clean looking little white Ranger short bed standard cab pickup truck off on the side of the yard. And it turned out to be one of the old, uber rare factory original Ranger EVs. Of the approximately 1,200 produced, about 800 of them were crushed, and there is a very dedicated following. You may remember done project along with his lovely daughters. So please, let's take it away, Gibran.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the introduction, Jay, and thanks for having me join you. As Jay mentioned, I sort of became an accidental EV owner and pretty soon, hopefully, driver. In October of this year, I was up in Linwood and saw this truck, thought it was a joke, saw the electric sticker underneath the Ranger emblem and said to my buddy, hey, look, somebody put an electric sticker under that truck. And we started taking a look around it and realized there was a big case in the middle of the truck from about the firewall back to the rear axle. And back there in the back was a giant Siemens motor with a Ford logo on it. So as we were checking out, I asked the guys inside about it, and they said, we don't know anything about it. It doesn't work. It's a basket case. We're sort of scared of it. It looks like Back to the Future. We don't know what to do with it. So I went back and offered him $500, and my buddy said, it's going to take a real weirdo to buy this truck, and you've got a weirdo here with $500. So I suggest you accept his offer. The guy reached out to his regional manager or whoever and said, sure, we'll take $500, get it out of here. So that was October 10th. I drove it home and, you know, we had looked under the hood and I noticed something that looked like a replacement part. And it turned out to be the onboard charger. And the retail price of that was $1,800. So when I saw that, I thought, okay, a truck with an $1,800 charger on it, that might be worth taking home for $500. And looking at the wiring, I knew that I was going to have my hands full going forward. And Jay gave a little bit of the stats there on the Ford Rangers. They were built from 98 to 2002. I did find an MSRP, even though they were all leased, as a lot of you probably know, but the MSRP was $52,700 in that time frame. They were built with both lead acid batteries and nickel metal batteries. I think it was the first 2 years that were built with lead acid. There were 39 8-volt batteries in the pack. And then in 2000 or so, roundabout there, they started using nickel metal hydride. And when they did that, they put in 12-volt batteries. So they used 25 batteries And then they added a module in the pack that they called the IOM that worked with the BCM, which is what they called the equivalent of the BMS. As I mentioned before, it has a Siemens 3-phase AC induction motor rated 90 horsepower. And it has a single speed 3-to-1 transmission. And then the gearbox reduces down for a total of about 12.5-to-1 to the rear wheels. They were built from the ZEV mandate that was created in the 90s by CARB. So here's some of the stats from the original build and some of the stats that are coming with this truck, and then I'm in the direction I'm headed right now. So it's built with nickel metal. It had the early generation J1772 charge connector, which a lot of people called Avcon. From what I can tell, Avcon actually built the charge station. And so that connector, the flat connector, some people call the paddle connector, a lot of folks referred to as the Avcon. The nickel metal truck supposedly had a range of 65 to 90 miles. Actually, I think Ford spec'd it at like 85 or 90, but there was a Southern California Edison Electric did a paper on the Ford Ranger. They acquired one and ran it through its paces, and that 65 to 90 miles number comes out of their report. The battery weight, not the entire pack, but just the batteries that were in the pack, totaled 950 pounds with the nickel metal version. This truck got modified, it looks like to me, in 2016, and it got a set of lithium titanate batteries in it. They were made by a company in Reno, Nevada, that's since been sold and moved to Russia. These modules are no longer made. They were pouches that were assembled, 6 pouches to a module. The pouches had I think a nominal voltage of 2.5 volts and a maximum of 2.8. There were 6 pouches to a module. This truck had 23 modules in it. They're pretty big. I've got them out here in the garage. I can show you in a minute. They probably weigh about 35 pounds. And the pack had to be extended vertically with like 1-inch wood spacers to fit them all in. At that time, apparently the guy who converted the truck put on a standard J1772 AC charge inlet connector. So it already had that when I got it. So that was really nice to not have to deal with. Hard to get specs on the original LTO batteries, but looks like it probably, in best case, had a range of about 66 miles, maybe 75. Talk a little bit about it later, but I've decided to convert to the lithium iron phosphate batteries. I'm going to maintain the J1772 connector. The batteries I've got are 100 amp hour CALB prismatic, the plastic case, the gray ones that a lot of you have probably seen and maybe used. I just picked those up on Sunday. I'm expecting a real world range of probably somewhere between 90 and 105 miles. If I'm really conservative and I'm not running the air conditioning or the heat, I'll probably push that to 110 miles, but somewhere in that area. The battery weight of these LifePos is almost 800 pounds. So I have dropped a little bit of weight, probably 150 pounds from the original nickel metal. When they built the truck with nickel metal, it had a payload of 700 pounds available. The charger that's now on board under the hood is an Elcon 5 kilowatt charger, wide AC input range, 110 volts to 260 volts AC. So works really well. Auto detects input voltage and adjusts AC input current draw accordingly so that it's not going to try to draw, say, 40 amps on a 120 volt circuit. It's 5 kilowatts when it's on 240 volts AC. Draws about 20 amps per leg at 240 volts and cranks out about 14 amps DC. It does have a CAN bus interface, so it's capable capable of being interfaced with a BMS over CAN bus, which is really nice. So here's some pictures of the original Avcon charge inlet on some pictures I downloaded on the internet. And then there's a couple pictures of the modified connector on the truck that I've got. This is where the onboard charger is located. It's under the hood. On top of it, we see a high voltage interface box right there. So this is where the high voltage comes out of the pack to under the hood to power the DC to DC converter that keeps the 12-volt system going. And it also powers the air conditioner, the heater for the cabin, and the power steering pump. The power steering pump is high voltage DC powered. It's an AC motor. It has a built-in inverter. So that's kind of interesting. So the Ford charger was underneath all that. And then pictures on the right here, you can see in that picture, I've got the high voltage interface box open, but here's the Elcon. And this is a little bit of a rat's nest wiring of a bunch of relays that had to be added to do a variety of things. That's what I spent about 6 hours figuring out the day after I brought the truck home. And there's the Elcon charger off their website. Seems to be a really nice charger. It's what a lot of people go after when they're doing these lithium battery pack migrations on the Ranger. So like I said, I spent about 3 or 4 hours figuring out how this guy wired this all up because, of course, I didn't have access to the original person that modified this or even the last owner. He used a pretty common method. It's actually published on the internet on one of the websites I've got in my link list at the end of the deck here. But I hadn't found that before I drew this out. So at any rate, he used a modular EV Power AVC2 to interface mostly with the pilot and the prox signal for the J1772 connector. And then he uses a relay to disable power steering and open up the brakes, the hydraulic level switch on the brake master cylinder, and then open up the interlock on the ignition interlock to prevent the car from being put in drive when it's plugged in. And then the other relay puts the BMS in charge mode. So that's most of what's going on here. Here's the Ford BCM on the left with the spoof board on top of it. So the spoof board takes the pack voltage and divides it up, in my case, 25 individual DC voltages, and tricks the Ford BCM into thinking everything's fine. That's basically what that resistor spoof board does. It was just kind of glued to the top of the Ford BCM, and that's sitting on top of a piece of plywood that's on top of LTO batteries in the front of the pack. On the right there is my Orion BMS that came in the pack. It's the 144 cell unit, so it's much bigger than I needed then and need now. Well, the original pack had 138 cells, so I guess it was the right size to buy with the LTO. And then you can see the other side here in the bottom photo. All of these connectors are the sense wires going to the individual cells. Those two are communicating over their own CAN bus. They're not tied into the vehicle's. Turns out the vehicle's got a J1850 bus for the OBD2 that the Ford BCM, the inverter module for the motor, the module running the dash cluster and all that, that stuff's all tied into the Ford 1850 bus. But the BMS and the Elcon are the sort of the only thing on the new CAN bus. So when I got the truck, it wouldn't take a charge. I couldn't figure out what was going on. Fortunately, I found this guy down in Eugene, Oregon, Lanny Thomason, who is in partnership with somebody named Nathan that runs Ranger Electric Trucks LLC, and Lanny's pretty active online. And he pointed me in the direction that I probably had a Orion BMS and I needed to get communications with it. So I dropped the pack, got my computer connected over CAN bus to the BMS, and saw a bunch of zeros in a lot of modules. See all those cells that are zeros. And all those zeros were 0-volt cells were keeping the BMS from putting the LCON into charge. So I did a variety of things. I finally isolated the modules that had 0-volt cells and tried to restore them using a balance charger. Some of them seemed to come back, and I was pretty hopeful. So I put the pack back together, and I was able to get the Orion BMS to go into charge mode and control the LCON and get things charging. I still had the pack out of the truck at that point. I built a temporary CAN bus extension cable and a temporary charge cable. I actually converted the charge connector in the pack to an Anderson Power Pole SB50 so that it'd be easy to hook up to. And a number of the cells acted like they came back, and I thought maybe things were going to work out but with the LTOs, but it didn't turn out that way. Here's some of the tools that I ended up using. You know, we all got a lot of tools in our toolbox, but of course I had to go buy and scrounge and find a bunch of new things. So that little balance charger, I thought it was helping during the restoration, but it turned out it wasn't really effective. I did have to get this Orion CAN adapter, which is a CAN bus to USB adapter. And I also got a CAN bus to Bluetooth adapter to use with the Torque application running on an Android phone. So I don't know if any of you have experience with that Torque app, but it's $5. It's really handy, and you can program it with custom PIDs. So that's one of the reasons why it works really well with the Orion BMS. It appears some of the standard OBD2 apps out there you can't add custom PIDs to, but Torque you can, and you can build your own displays. And then the other thing I needed to do was communicate with the Ford OBD2 network to figure out what was going on with the Ford BCM and with the traction inverter module, what all the diagnostic codes were, clear them, do all the resets and all that. I didn't have the Ford NGS next generation star diagnostics tool, and my newer Foxwell OBD2 scanner wouldn't talk to the Ranger, and it didn't have all the PIDs in it. So even if I could read things, I couldn't do the two-way communications I needed to. So there's a program called J1850 emulator. It's available on the internet, a free download, pretty quick and simple. And it works with adapters like that scan tool USB that I've got highlighted in the middle. So these were some of the things that turned out to be really helpful. So this is the pack with all the LTOs in it. Most of them are standing up on their bottom. There are two in the back there that are laying on their side. The BCM is in the front there, and then also in the back is the high voltage contactor box. And then there's one of the modules out of the pack. So I tried to do this restoration. I put the pack back together, and by the time I got it back together, so I electrically bypassed two of these LTO modules, 38 cells to 126 cells, lowered my maximum voltage to about 330 volts. But I was told that the truck would probably run down to about 265 volts. So I thought, okay, this is maybe going to be enough for me to try to drive the truck and see if it operates. Of course, without being able to hook the pack up to the truck with it sitting on the garage floor, I had to put the back in. And it's probably 1,000 pounds. So it's quite a little chore to do that. So I put it all back together, put the pack back together, got the wiring sorted out, reinstalled it in the pack. That's when I got the 1850 program involved and reset the DTCs that were present and cleared the battery history and all that stuff, and hopped in it. And it looks like my assistant just stepped out of the shop here right before her big moment. So Isabel and I hopped in the truck one night and turned it on, and it was so quiet and we were moving so slowly. I'm not sure at first she even knew we were moving. I had to sort of nudge her and say, hey, we're underway here. We're backing out of the garage. So we backed it out of the garage and took it for a lap around the neighborhood, probably 5 or 6 miles. And it made it back home. And over the course of the next couple days, I charged it up a few more times and ran it down, did another reset. But it became more obvious that those LTO batteries just didn't have any life left in them, given that they were at 0 volts when I found them. So this is kind of where we are today. Sunday, I actually drove down to Eugene, met Lanny down at his place there, and he had ordered a set plus a bunch of other of the Calb 100 amp cells to fix a pack he was working on for a customer. And I bought 106 of the Calb 100 amp cells. He banded them up for me. I got them home late Sunday night, and can't remember, Monday afternoon, I started setting them up in the pack. And that's kind of where things stand right now. You all probably know about the charge stations that are out there. There's the original Avcon charger. I ended up buying one of the portable level 1, level 2s off eBay. It was pretty cheap. Unfortunately, when it runs at 240 volts and level 2, it can't supply enough AC current for the Elcon charger. So it goes into overload and shuts down. I was really hesitant to buy one of these fixed home kind of level 2 chargers because of the cost, especially not knowing what was going on with this truck. $650, that's kind of a lot of money for a power control station. But then I stumbled on Snohomish County PUD had a $500 residential rebate for a level 2 charge station. So I ended up buying this charge point level 2 for less than this kind of knockoff eBay, Chinese run-of-the-mill 16 amp charger. So I think I got that 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, and I've got it installed and I've actually used it. It's a really nice charge station, and it's really nice to be able to get that rebate from the PUD. I'll copy and paste these. I have a text file of all these links. I'll put it in the chat as soon as I finish up. And then if anybody's interested in checking out any of these websites, if you haven't, you'll be able to go to them. This is sort of the collection of what's out there for the Ford Ranger community, and there's varying levels of kind of current participation. Jay mentioned my YouTube channel, and there's my contact information. And Jay's been in touch with me both over the phone and via email. So I don't know, how do you want to do questions, Jay?
Folks can unmute, or I'll be monitoring the chat window. Well, that was a nice wiring diagram you posted after you figured out what he was doing with those 12-volt relays. What program did you use to draw it?
I did that in Visio.
Visio.
Yeah. So there's the pack as it is right now. I've started, I don't know if I've done any over there. I've started to do the bus bars. These Calb cells that Lanny gets come with these nice wide low impedance semi-flexible bus bars. There are multiple layers of copper strapping, so you can sort of bend them to shorten them up, which is really nice. So you only really have to have one size of bus bars.
Are those cells supposed to have end plates on them, or can they just be banded together without end plates like that? I know some lithium iron phosphates, if they don't have end plates, they'll swell and get ruined.
Yeah, from the ends versus just from the sides.
The wide area ends should have end caps on them, at least with some. I don't know about those, but something to check into.
Yeah, I'll check into that. There's several of these that I know Lanny's put together down in Eugene, and some of them he's ended up taking apart. The one I saw was one somebody else had put together, and some of the cells went dead, and he had it apart, and they had no end plates on them, and they had no current swelling going on.
Well,
but,
look at the specs for that actual, the manufacturer specs for those cells and see what they say about it. Don't go by what some other person says. Go by what the manufacturer says. It's a lot of money there. So
yeah, good advice. I'll check into that.
If you're not using anti-corrosive compound on the bus bars, highly recommend it.
And Brian, wasn't a lot of the swelling with like the Thunder Sky and Winston cells early on attributable to the manufacturer using too high of a voltage spec?
That may be part of it. I don't know. My pack, which is sort of comparable to that, different manufacturer, I had the banding break just because I did it incorrectly and was running for that for probably 10 or 15,000 miles at least, and I didn't have any damage to any of the cells because of it. So either I got lucky or maybe it's because I'm fairly conservative in my charging. But again, manufacturer specs are your friend. Do what they say. So,
yeah. Like Mark Yormark posted that this many cells at 3.5 volts per cell would be 371 volts, but I seem to recall the CA100s run all the way up to 3.85 volts.
Yeah, the manufacturer says 3.8. It's not everybody runs them that high, with 106 in there, I'll be able to run them up to 3.75 and be just fine.
It isn't worth doing anything over about much more than nominal voltage. Nominal voltage is 3.3, so there is you look at the chart, there's very little amp hours above 3.38. So there's no reason to go over 3.5.
Okay.
I think I run my cells, which are the GBS ones, I balance them at 3.5 for what it's worth. So
it isn't worth stressing the cells out. If you want to make the cells last longer, you just charge it just above the nominal voltage, which in that with the lithium iron phosphate is about 3.3.
Brian, were you saying balance at 3.5 or a max charge of 3.5?
Same difference. Basically, if they go higher than that, then the balancer should drag them back down to 3.5. And when everything hits 3.5, that's when it should shut off. So, I mean, Mark is is right. There's very little additional amp hour capacity once you go past about 3.3, 3.4. If you look at the charge curve on these cells, it's an S, right? It's that, and when you hit 3.3, 3.35, you're right about here, and then it just shoots up to infinity, or when the cells explode. So I mean, again, whatever the manufacturer says, they probably give maximums and recommendeds, and pick something on the conservative side of recommended.
So prismatics and pouch cells are, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're basically the same thing. Or just as with the prismatic, you have more layers and it goes inside the plastic container. But anyway, you can see up on my picture there, you see these are all pouch cells, and they are pressurized at 8 pounds per square inch, which isn't much weight, but when you start talking about the whole you know, whatever that cell is, it ends up being quite a bit of weight. So anyway, yeah, they need a little compression. They need a little compression. I see a lot of guys they just put it between blocks of foam, and I don't know how much that does, but at least it gives it some restriction. Yeah, you want to do what Brian said and go to the manufacturer specs if the calv cells have that. Figure out how many pounds per square inch pressure you need.
How about your spec
something you
on
mentioned
the-
yeah, something you mentioned about the chargers. You're going to have to watch it because your charger is obviously ignoring the pilot signal from your J1772, and that's why it overloaded. The charger doesn't see the pilot signal and charges at maximum no matter what's coming into it. Well, the charge cord is supposed to tell it to crank back to 16 amps.
That's a good point, Randy. The
Yeah, on the AC input. Yep.
with an Orion BMS should be able to dial back.
The Orion tells the charger what to do on the charge current, but there's nothing on the pilot signal telling the power control station what to do.
Now, what happens is the charge station sends out a signal that says you can have this much current, and the charger is supposed to adjust to that, either at the charger's maximum or something less. And if it's overloading that 16 amp charge cord, that means it's ignoring that pilot signal is not being processed. So the charger maxed out and the cord can't take it.
Yep.
So something's wrong with the reading of the pilot signal from the J1772.
That pilot signal is being made up by that little AVC2 module. It's not being created by the BMS or by the LCON.
Yeah, I've got that ABC2 and my conversion as well, and it just simulates just the bare minimums to get the J1772 charging station to
Yeah,
close.
it just tells the it just tells the station turn on. It doesn't
Yep.
process to say, oh, I'm only putting out a 25% signal.
So I've got a Manzanita charger, so I just manually control the charge power based on what I know the charging station will do. So almost all the public J1772 stations out there are 30 amp stations, and my charger won't go that high on a steady state basis anyway. So I just crank it up to the max there and turn it down when I'm running off something smaller. So, but I fiddle with things. Not everybody wants to. So I'm guessing that since you have piles of batteries all over the floor, you have some more tolerance for that than many people. So.
So do you have any more room in the pack for to increase the string? More voltage?
Or space?
Yeah.
Not really.
Okay.
I think I'm pretty much out of space. I'm also heading towards the maximum voltage of the LCON. The LCON maxes out at 412 volts.
Okay. Well, you're a long way from it.
Are the cells attached in any way to the actual housing to keep them from shifting around, or what's the solution for that?
So you saw how they're all banded together. Sort of what I've seen done is some blocking down at the bottom to keep the bottom ones from shifting, and just sort of counting on the strapping and the bus bars to keep the top ones from shifting around. The bottom of the case has strips of acrylic to just 1/4 inch thick strips of acrylic to just keep the cells off the bottom, because there does end up some moisture, either probably condensation mostly. And those LTO modules were all sort of wet when they came out.
You might almost put in some kind of mechanism to check for excessive moisture or let it drain or ventilate somehow. I don't know whether those packs had any kind of positive ventilation mechanism or not, but it might be worth doing, especially if you're going to be driving in the rain a lot. If it's going to be a Sunday driver, it probably isn't a big deal, but definitely some mechanism to keep those cells from shifting around. Because if they do, it's going to put a lot of stress on those bus bars and probably cause the terminals to come loose or even damage the cells.
Mm.
So, and any of that could cause, unreliability, to put it delicately. So,
Yeah, there is some air and moisture control. There's some drain holes in the bottom of the case that go out to the mount points and then kind of funnel up so that water can't come in, but moisture can go out. And then there's a fan in the middle of the pack, and there's a air inlet at the top of the back of the pack. So the idea is it kind of sucks air in from the back, blows it across the batteries, the bottom of the batteries, and then forces any moisture out those drain holes.
maybe a good trick would be to rig it so that whenever it's charging, that fan also runs, because there's going to be making a little bit of heat in the pack anyway when it does that, so it'll help cook itself dry. So.
Yeah, the old LTO installation had blocked off all those drain holes, and when I redid the plexiglass strips, I made sure those drain holes were open. Thanks, Jay.
So Brian mentioned the connections, the bolts, the connections. Yeah, those things are critical. And the more that moves around, the more it vibrates, the more those connections loosen up, and then you start having real problems. Now, one of the techniques, and I know EVTV uses this all the time, is they use Norlock washers. And Norlock washers it's a two-sided washers with serrated edges, and so they're expensive. But once that bolt is torqued to the proper level, they don't vibrate loose. So
A lot less expensive than a damaged cell, though.
what's that? What's that? What'd you say, Brian?
A lot less expensive than a damaged cell.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you don't want to damage the cell. So those connections, so it's worthwhile spending them extra money to get Norlock washers for that, to make sure all those connections stay firm.
And a torque wrench that will work with the cells and those bolts. So
The bolts that came with these cells have some blue Loctite type compound on them, and they came with split washers.
Okay.
I was planning on using. What do you think?
That's probably a Norlock washer then. Is it serrated on both sides?
Let me grab it. I don't think so.
it sounds like just a standard lock washer to me.
Well, I said it's two-sided though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just a split ring lock washer.
No.
But
Yeah, okay, I see. No, a Norlock, it's like having two. It almost looks like two washers. There's a split in the middle, so it compresses down and then it's serrated edge. Anyway, it's just good preventative stuff to have that. I know EVTV went through a lot of that, how many years ago.
Yeah, I will second that one, because on the Ranger EV pack that I built with Nissan Leaf modules several years ago, we reused the original Nissan bus bar bolts and washers, but when Tim Ritchie dropped it just a couple weeks ago, we found indeed one out of the hundreds of bolts had loosened up and scorched the module that it was attached to.
Okay, yep.
And it's so difficult to inspect this pack once it's reinstalled in the truck.
Yep. Norlock.
What was the name of that washer you're talking about?
Norlock.
N-O-R?
L-O-C-K.
I think it's got a D in it. Nord. N-O.
Oh, yeah, it's Nord. Yeah, okay, right. Nordlock, yeah. That'd be great.
Hopefully that.
I was just wondering how the leaf pack that Jay built into the specs on this with the different cells.
My memory is failing on me, but we put a total of 80 Gen 2 Nissan Leaf modules in there. So basically like 44 kilowatt hours worth. What was your kilowatt hours in this pack, Jabron?
Shoot. Hang on.
Yeah.
.33 times 100.
About 33 or 34 from the cell count, something like that.
Gotcha.
So it was
Yeah, up to 35 kilowatt hours, depending on how you calculate it. But there is an issue with the Ranger EV, some Coulomb counting in the original controls where it doesn't like going beyond its theoretical maximum capacity. And that's something that Lanny was wrestling with a few years ago. Hopefully he solved it by now. Okay, well, thank you very much for an excellent presentation, Jabron. If you've got time, I hope you may hang out a little while for questions afterwards.
Yeah.
And we can move on down the line, but invite you to come back as often as you can, please, to SEVA, and we'd like to see that truck in person.
yeah, 35 kilowatt hours. That'll probably take you 150 miles. That's what you think? Maybe. I don't know.
All in how fast you drive that brick.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Jabron. Let's switch back.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you release it? I'm sorry.
Okay, where do I go to do that?
I've lost it too.
Sorry, what needs to happen right now, Jay?
Say again?
Are you trying to get anyone unmuted?
Oh, you're back, Jay.
I'm back, yes. So I have taken over. Andrea, I haven't seen you in the chat window. Are you ready to present the survey? See if you pop up about that. See, we wake Andrea T up.
I am here. Let me get my camera going. Yeah, I didn't plan on presenting. I can just, I can send it out. You know, I can put it in the link and people can start doing it. We can send it out in the, you know, in the listserv. It's, you know, basically we put together a question. I think we want to get basic demographics on who people are, and then ask some sort of basic questions about what you drive, because that's why we're all in this club. And then some questions about either thoughts or programs that you've either been involved in recently or would like to do. Like, you know, he obviously just put that YouTube out there, and that's the kind of stuff that if we sort of brand it somewhat with the SEVA, we can use it as materials where we can be, you know, sharing. When people ask questions, we can send them that link to BMS or whatever. So yeah, I didn't really plan on any presentation here, except for I have finished it. I sent the link out to you and to Grace tonight, and then so I can post it out on the chat if you'd like.
Yes, thank you. Please go ahead and start posting that link. I took the latest draft of the survey before the meeting,
Okay.
and I think it'll be a useful tool. Thanks for all the effort you've put into that over, it's been a number of months, many months now.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's a free survey, so it doesn't update easily, and I lost some data, so I was just frustrated. So, but yeah. So I will post it here in the link, and then I'll put it on the listserv tonight. So that sounds good.
All right.
Hey, Jay, this is Grace. Do you have any suggestion about a time frame for when we would like people to complete the survey?
Why don't we have
So
it
we'd
done
like to
by
compile the
election?
results. So what do you think?
I'm thinking by the election in February. That gives us, 2 months to push it.
Okay. Yeah, well, it would be good to have it done maybe a few days before that February meeting so we can announce results from that survey at that time.
Yes.
Good. Okay.
Yes.
Everybody keep that in mind.
Of February then.
And Andrea, if you could put out a suggested deadline for completion of that survey when you send out that link, that would be terrific. Like say maybe end of January.
Okay. And I might see if Deborah can post it on the web somewhere. So yeah, okay, we'll do
Sure.
that. Sounds good.
Terrific. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah.
Grace, you've got the screen. Would you like to take the floor with the policy update?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few things going on right now. We got a great presentation last month from Matthew Metz at Cultura, and so they are working on a limit like that. California, as you probably know, already did put a limit in until 2035, so they do have a little bit further along to comply with it. But that was by executive order from the governor rather than popularly legislated by the legislative body. So it's pretty exciting that we maybe have a chance to get to do that here. They've been working on that effort for a while now, and so we'll be keeping everybody updated on that, and especially on when there's going to be hearings on that bill. So hopefully we can mass a few cars down there in Olympia, socially distanced. Actually, they won't be meeting in Olympia at all. So it's going to be not so good for doing any kind of visual for that. But we will want people to be able to log in and testify online. That's how they're going to be doing testimony this year in Olympia. So.
And for the benefit of our fossil fuel friends, we won't be getting rid of gas cars that were manufactured 2029 or earlier. They would not infringe upon their use or resale. They just wouldn't sell any new gas cars after 2030.
That's right. Exactly. Okay. And you'll still be able to sell, oh no, you won't be able to sell used cars that are gas 2030 and later. So. Yeah, so keep that in mind too. Yeah.
That may be a negotiating point.
Yeah, that very possibly will be. You're correct. Good. And there's some other things going on too. There is an organization that invited us to participate. It's an transportation electrification coalition. That's actually a national effort. And they've had a few meetings now. So it's kind of a coalition of local groups that are doing a lot of things. Such as the Northeast organization, the air quality organization up in the Northeast states. They've been doing a lot of stuff for leaders. Seattle, Portland, the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, and some West Coast folks as well, getting together in this coalition. So they've been kind of putting together some strategies for nationally what they want to do, kind of push what's going on. One of the things that the Northeast states for coordinated air use management is the name of it. They've put together a white paper talking about ride hailing and how that really is a big area that needs to be electrified. They've got in this white paper a lot of good statistics, and one that I thought was really telling is that they looked at the average greenhouse gas emissions of a regular gasoline car making a solo trip, and then compared that with a ride-hailing trip of that same person. And the ride-hailing trip would emit about 47% more greenhouse gases because of all the extra driving and deadheading that driver does in between rides. So that means that's a really big area that we can make a difference going to electrification. So they're really pushing that with some strategies in this white paper. I'd like to share that with everybody. I can send that on the list. And then another thing that this coalition is doing, and they'd really like some buy-in and some comments from local groups such as ours, and it's about equity, equity in clean transportation options. And so they've put together kind of a policy statement that they'd be really interested in getting some feedback on about public health and air quality, electrification strategies that would give the grid and be able to have options for everybody to be able to do charging, as well as getting communities engaged in implementing strategies to reduce air pollution. So how do we get people interested in being involved in this? As well as looking at marginalized communities, underserved communities, how can electrification reach out to those charging deserts? And so they really want to get some ideas of, does this policy statement cover everything they need to, talking about equity or not? So I'm going to send that one out to the listserv as well, and I would love you guys to look at that, and please let us know if you think it's good, if SEVA should promote this and be willing to support it as well. And then, let's see, what else do we have going on? That's about all I have for right now. Jay already covered the Electric Auto Association's election that's coming up. So they have until, I believe it's January 5th or so to vote on that. So definitely, if you're a member, or if you're not a member, you have time to become a member and vote. So I'd encourage you to do that too. Great. Any questions? Any thoughts? Anything to add to the policy discussion?
On the Electric Auto Association election, former National President Regine Fellows contacted me right before the meeting. She wants to remain involved, no longer as president, and she has endorsed 3 candidates: Elaine Borseth, Rebecca Fisher, and Michael Peters. I will forward her message onto the list and encourage everybody, an EAA member, to sign on and vote. Everybody's been sent, or if they log in, they will see their individual code to vote.
Jay, this is Jeff.
Howdy, Jeff.
Grace, I thought that I heard some rumblings about some legislation coming to make sure that the non-Tesla dealers can use the Tesla model for selling their electric vehicles in the state. And I think it's a national effort.
Yeah, that's right, Jeff. It's actually Rivian that's pushing that, and they actually did give us a nice presentation about that a couple of months ago. And yes, that bill still is active, and they'll be looking for support for that bill as well. And folks like Ed, who bought his Arcmoto down in Oregon, would really like to be able to have purchase and servicing of that vehicle available here in Washington. So another bill we really need.
Arcmoto and Rivian are talking to each other now.
Yes. Oh, good. Thank you for Ed for connecting them. That's great.
They're actually talking. I sent them each other's emails.
That's great. So yes, that will be in play. So we'll keep you updated on that one as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Grace.
Yeah, there's one more thing too, I believe, that is likely to come up, and that's going to be the vehicle miles traveled bill. Do you know, Jeff, do you know anything about the status of that, and if that's actually a bill being introduced, or if it's going to be part of the budget discussion, or what? Jeff, are you still there? You're muted. Darn. Okay, well, Jeff's been on top of that one, so I was thinking he might have some more details, but we'll keep everyone updated, whatever comes up.
It is on some radar screens now. I pass a billboard in Gig Harbor every day that says, "No GPS car tax."
Right. Yep.
Okay, we have no other scheduled events on the horizon that I'm aware of. Do we, Grace?
No, I don't believe we do at this point, although since it looks like there might be a vaccine available soon, then it's possible that by next summer we might be able to see things start opening up again. And I'm hoping that we might be able to start doing some actual in-person outreach by the summer. So let's cross our fingers on that, and everybody, be safe and all that. So.
All right.
I have a little information on the road use charge bill.
Philip? Yeah, please.
Yeah, that's Philip. Yeah, and I was aware of this somehow. Somebody sent this to me that Representative Saldana is kind of pushing this, and there may be a co-sponsor. And the idea would be to apply the road use charge only to electric vehicles. As a way of getting their toe under the mat, so to speak. And as far as we can tell, it would not eliminate any tabs or tab fees. So it would be added on top of any fees we're currently paying. That's as far as we can tell at this point. There's a draft and a supplemental draft, and if you get on the Washington State bill tracking website, I haven't done enough of this to know exactly where it is, but it's bouncing back and forth between different committees. The difficulty with this might be each representative I understood was only to drop 7 bills in this session when the session kicks off. So probably behind the scenes, they're trying to decide what bill to drop, and you don't know until the session whether they're going to actually vote on it or not.
Well, Phil, we've got it in law that should a road usage charge pass, the annual EV registration surcharge will go away.
Some of it. There were certain. There were several.
Just $150, not the 75. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if they stick to that, of course, the new law could absolve that old law. That's what they sometimes do when they're hurting for funds. So it just when it supplements the thing, it just says in place of and lists the old laws, and they're just gone.
Well, that's why we have to be involved, so we can make sure that we're not getting double dipped here. Exactly. So, it doesn't seem fair to a few of us who've talked about this that they start with electric vehicles first, and it doesn't seem to matter what the vehicle is. It would be not related to weight either, or any other kind of road damage that anybody can identify, as far as I can tell, at least reading it quickly.
Well, Phil, could you look up that road usage charge bill number and post it as soon as available?
Yeah, I was trying to do that right now, and my fingers aren't fast enough to get it for you. I'll do that in a couple of minutes if I can find it. Yeah.
Yeah, Mark has posted a message asking about what's the road usage bill. And so for those of you who don't know, maybe a little background's in order. Jeff was actually participating in some of the meetings early on, trying to figure out a more equitable way of being able to get vehicles to pay for road maintenance and construction in the state of Washington. Currently, it's funded entirely by gas tax and by the electric vehicle fees. As you know, we pay the $225 a year in lieu of paying gas taxes, which is not really a fair way to do it, because some people who don't drive that much in their electric vehicles, especially short-range cars, are paying a lot more than they would have been in gas taxes, whereas some other people who are driving a whole lot aren't really paying their fair share. And so the road usage charge would look at how many miles a year you drive and charge you a certain amount per mile so that you're actually paying as you go, basically. And how you're going to report that and how you're going to account for miles that you have traveled outside of the state have been big issues in trying to resolve how it's going to be fairly implemented. So it's been massaged quite a bit over the years, and it sounds like we're ready to start our first pilot project. Now, Oregon's already done a pilot here, so they've already got some of that research under their belt there. And so we're building on some of the things that Oregon has done here. Let's all make sure that we are participating and keeping informed about it so we can make sure we do the best version of it here, if indeed that's the way we're going to go. Does that make sense?
We actually did Grace, we actually did a pilot with about 2,000 people. And I think Jeff was in that pilot. Right. So they're past the pilot phase. And it's pretty typical. They have like, I don't know, 8 different ways they could implement it, and you don't really know until the final draft of the bill what they try to do. Somebody did an analysis of the electric vehicle only part of this, and they figured that the amount a typical electric vehicle would charge is equivalent to a truck that gets 14 miles to the gallon.
Mm-hmm.
So overcharging EVs. Yeah, I'll keep looking here, and I'm going to mute myself.
Yeah, the amount per mile is going to be a big factor too, because that could definitely be less fair than doing the gas tax, especially for very efficient vehicles and for vehicles that are lightweight or very heavy and doing more damage to roads. So all of that's been considered. That's all being talked about for compromises to make this bill work. So we'll see what happens, but more to come.
All right, thank you very much, Grace. One item of significant news in the past month has been the recall on Chevy Bolts with a B due to battery fires and the temporary fix of software limiting those cars to 90% state of charge. Do we have any Bolt owners to the room that have anything more to add? Nope, seeing none. I'll mention we're currently working on designing a Bolt-based conversion because it has an excellent motor and gearbox, and I'll be following the battery trials closely. For those of you who haven't heard, it's all 2017 to 2019 Bolts with Korean-built LG batteries, and when sitting at 100% state of charge, whether plugged in or not, as of a couple weeks ago, 5 of them had burst into flames just sitting there. So that's
Jay, I took my Bolt in for the recall just last week. I don't have much to add except that it probably took less than an hour for them to reprogram it to limit the charging to 90%. It seemed kind of unnecessary to me, really, because that option's already in the car.
Yeah, they'd be liable if they didn't force it.
Evidently, there's going to be a second recall for the permanent fix, so that you could charge to 100%. But other than, I don't know what that recall might be. Does anybody know?
And then someone who's analyzed it more than me has a theory that it's not based on the cells themselves, but the BMS.
Yeah.
That an electronic module is what's failing, that sparks the fire. I had thought they might be running them too high, but it's got a really excellent liquid cooling system in there that actually uses the air conditioning compressor to cool the refrigerant. So it's much more than passive air-cooled or active water-cooled through just a radiator. So I view it as a buying opportunity on used Bolts. You might wind up with a newer design battery in the end if you get really lucky. And one news tidbit showed that the used Bolts had the greatest markdowns on Black Friday of any used EV in all advertised sales, over $1,000 per car. So they're getting cheap. Speaking
What are they selling for now?
Lest I unfairly tilt the market, I could say that a month ago, auction values at wholesale of used Bolts with under 50,000 miles were like 12,000 and change, while salvage yard auctions for, crashed Bolts that were open to the public were going over 11,000. So that's an imbalance that can't last for long. I try to keep tabs on EV-only dealers and just learned about one that I had not heard of before. Has anyone had any experience with Island E-Car on Orcas? They are a EV only dealer. They do seem to be operating on island time, open for 6 hours a day, 4 days a week. But they've got quite an assortment of used EVs on Orcas Island. Is that squeaking or laughing that I?
Oh, it might be me typing. Plug-in America has a good thing on road use charge. I found that. I put that on the SEVA list in a second here, and I'm still looking for the law.
Okay. Well, I have a video to share of our refrigerated van project. Before that, because we've gone through all the major items of our agenda during the first hour. Anybody got any good the order items that they'd like to add first? Okay, well, I will try to share my screen and queue up this video real quick here. Here we go. Are we seeing this video?
My name is Joe Gruber. I have the privilege of serving as Executive Director for the University District Food Bank, and I actually have been with the food bank now a little more than 17 years. So the University District Food Bank is really the physical manifestation of our community's desire to ensure that all our neighbors are well fed and nourished. At its heart, we are a walk-up food pantry for individuals and families from across Northeast Seattle. So the food bank has been a community resource for almost 40 years. And as we've kind of gone through our work, we've really tried to provide a highly accessible and friendly service for any of our neighbors.
I'm Diane. I've got 2 kids and 9 grandkids and another one on the way. Sometimes you don't have enough money, and that helps the income, where you don't have to go without eating. They've helped me a lot, great deal, and I thank God for them.
The food bank has a large number of longtime partners that have really enabled us to have a great variety of food donations each and every week. We work with 15 grocery stores in and around Northeast Seattle. We want to ensure the safe handling of all that food from the moment we take it off the loading dock at the grocery store to the moment we bring it back here to the food bank. Investing in a refrigerated van a dozen years ago was a really wise choice. When we built our new facility, we made some environmentally conscious choices. We also then built a rooftop garden, and then to kind of begin to think beyond the walls of just the food bank, we thought that an investment in an electric van made perfect sense for continuing to make environmental choices that have a ripple effect on the health and well-being of our community. So, last fall when we were looking for a replacement vehicle, we had approached Maxwell, and really talking to Maxwell, it looked like that transition was going to be to an electric van. And Maxwell was able to connect us with EV Works, and Greg and Jay have been great to work with.
So I'm Greg Draward. I'm the operations manager for EV Works. EV Works is a vehicle technology company, and we focus primarily on vehicle maintenance, repair, and conversions of electric vehicles. We met the folks at the University District Food Bank through our colleagues at Maxwell Vehicles, who knew that they were looking for an electric food recovery van. So the first thing we did at the University District Food Bank, once we understood the general operating profile of the equipment, was to define the mission requirements. The mission requirements really focus on things like the range of the vehicle, the capacity, the tempo of operations, when they're going to be able to charge it. The key element of what they were looking for, obviously, was electrification. The designer of the conversion is Maxwell Vehicles. They're our colleagues. We're a licensed builder for them with this technology. And for this particular model, they've utilized a Tesla Model 3 drive unit and battery system. We use a Ram ProMaster chassis. We removed the internal combustion engine and we replaced that with an electric drive motor. And then we installed the battery system for that. So we're really delighted to be working with the University District Food Bank. They're doing vital work for our community. To help them with their mission is really fulfilling for us. We're able to take this new technology, put it in use, but put it in use in a really meaningful way. That motivates our entire team. It brings us great joy to be involved in that. And at the end of the day, we really feel like we're doing something that has an impact.
Working with Greg and Jay, early on, they really wanted to understand what our expectations and needs were for a vehicle. So they really invested in the time to ensure that the ePro was going to be able to deliver. Been really communicative and responsive to hearing our feedback to ensure that the van that we're taking possession of is going to meet all our expectations. When we think about how important food is beyond just the calories that it provides and the nutrition it provides, food is there across cultures in moments of celebration, in moments of sorrow, in times of great challenge and in great joy. People can connect and build relationship over the power of food. And I think, what we find, how we're able to connect across all our volunteers, across our customers, across the many community members who come together to support our work, really is just, the power of wanting to ensure that everybody's pantries remain full.
Stop share. All right, thank you. Tim Economou asked about a camper version. We have a top of the line Pleasure Way Tofino that'll get the electric drivetrain next, but it's proving popular as a camping rental van, so its conversion date has been pushed back. We're looking at like February, a dead of the winter kind of project for that one. Okay, any other questions on this project? You've all heard of it before, so I don't want to belabor the point, but we finally finished up that video about it.
I'm sorry, what was the name of the camping van again? What was it called?
You can look it up. It's a Pleasure Way Tofino, T-O-F-I-N-O. They do those conversions in Canada, and it's the closest living equivalent to a good old Westphalia camper van with a very simple, utilitarian, but very high quality interior.
So is it Dodge van or Volkswagen based?
It's a Dodge Ram. Well, they don't even claim Dodge anymore. It's a Ram ProMaster, which is actually a Fiat Ducato that's been in production for a longer period in Europe. It's the #1 RV chassis in Europe.
Hey, Jay, what powers the refrigeration unit on that food bank truck?
That's the beauty of it, is that the Tesla air conditioning compressor is 30 kBTU. The typical rooftop cassette on a small refrigerated van is in the 14 to 18 kBTU range. So we've got twice the refrigeration in a package that is completely invisible from the outside. And when it's just in maintenance mode during our summer testing, it over 24 hours averaged 1.5 kilowatts. So you can even maintain it as a refrigerator just plugged into a regular wall outlet, but you need level 2 charging in order to make progress on the charge and keep the veggies cool. But we were able to drop the box from over 70 degrees down to a 38-degree refrigeration set point inside of 30 minutes with that cooling system. Because the Tesla during supercharging supercharging in Death Valley in August is about the only time that it spends any significant time at 100% duty cycle on that compressor. Wouldn't that be right, Teresa? Okay.
Yep, I would agree with you on that one. They work in the summertime, that's for damn sure.
Yeah, and we've got a beautiful app that remotely controls those functions as well as the charging. So that's been in service for going on 3 months now. And I checked, they were driving it around again today. It's going quite nicely. Grace, did you have something else to add?
I was just going to share a picture. If I can share my screen, I'm not sure if I can. Do I need permission to do that?
You shouldn't need permission.
I'm just going to try it.
Hit that green button.
Can you guys see that?
I see a black screen. There you are.
Oh, good. There's some cars in this picture. That's a few days ago. You see this? Some electric cars in the picture?
Yeah. Couldn't possibly be a few days ago. There's no masks.
It was a few days ago. I got together with my two sisters for a socially distanced walk. But for the photo, we took our masks off. We're all standing next to our electric cars. So we're a totally electric family. Over on the far right, my little sister Jane has my old Leaf. In the middle, my sister Annie has the Fiat 500e. And then I've got the Model Y over here. And this doesn't show my daughter, who has a 2017 Leaf as well. So all electric. Just wanted to share that.
Excellent. EV is often the only place that EV ownership seems to be more viral than in a family is in a firehouse. I see that fireman ownership just exponentially multiply as they watch each other use the free block heater outlets. And it's the season for EV related Christmas greetings. I just made contact with my secretary from 20 years ago in Mississippi, and her whole family or extended family are driving Volts now because there isn't significant charging infrastructure in Mississippi for DC fast yet.
Yeah, and it looks amazing.
Hey, Jeff, anything new on the Volt Runner? I thought you started sharing, sorry.
Oh, no, nothing new.
Okay.
I was having trouble unmuting before. For some reason, it's working now.
Well, it's working now. Got any news for us?
No.
Oh, bummer. Okay. Well, we're at 8:20, officially 10 minutes left. I'll make a last call for any pertinent announcements and a reminder that the ACES meeting is tomorrow from 3 to 5 p.m. I'll try and pull up that link and post it in the chat window.
Before we started, I thought you mentioned something that somebody might have some information about Aptera.
Ah, yes. I pinged one of our Aptera fans, and they did not have any special info on that other than, you know, Aptera is back from the dead. They're claiming to have a 1,000-mile battery and covered the body with solar cells that could provide up to 40 miles of range per day while sitting in the sun. Anything to add?
Just looking at their website, it looks like a lot of, well, it would be really neat if we could figure out how to do that.
Yeah. Forward-looking statements were always Aptera's specialty, so I'm a little worried.
And it now comes in black.
They offered 3 different battery sizes. The lowest one cost is like $26,000, and something's kind of rumored that, or I'm not quite sure. Do they have a deal with Tesla so they can use the supercharging? This was kind of, it wasn't really clear from the publications, but if they do use the supercharging, it would be at a rate of 500 miles in a half hour, or 500 miles an hour. So it would be quite a bit less, but they will have some form of DC fast charging.
Did you happen to see that charge connector? Does that look familiar?
Yeah, the charge connector I saw was that of a Tesla. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, that's what caught my attention.
Yeah. And it's going to have wheel hub motors, which will be the first. Let's see. We have, what is the truck? The truck is the the truck that's coming out of Wheel Hub Motors is anyway, there's gonna be a couple of vehicles with Wheel Hub Motors, and Aptera is one of them. Lordstown Motors is supposed to have in-wheel motors. And we'll see how that works out. I just the whole plain physics of it, I kind of doubt.
Yeah, there is an Orbis, ORBIS Technologies, that is actually offering in-wheel motors in small volumes to builders. They're basically in beta testing right now, and they have responded to our inquiries. So might actually get to see one in the Northwest before long.
Oh, for your company?
Yes, we have a client who's interested in testing the latest EV technologies.
I see.
Just because I'm curious, this is Philip. There was a concern originally with unsprung weight or something, and these in-wheel motors don't have that issue? Question mark.
Well,
they try to address it. There's more vibration that you get when it's mounted in the wheel versus than in the body.
Yeah, there's more mass going up and down. That's just a given because the motor's in the wheel. So, you know, for all suspension technology, if you want to keep they talk about the tire patch. In other words, the rubber on the road. You can't have a bunch of head weight going up and down, changing directions all the time to have that done well. So, I guess they can.
Isn't it a spring damper thing though? Because truck tires are huge and much heavier than passenger tires.
Okay. Well, we'll get off into re-engineering the whole drivetrain if we go much farther. Any other points before we call it? I'll go ahead and call it 5 minutes early if we got, and people can continue to talk on Zoom for much longer, as long as they like.
One more thing from me. Actually, it's from Ed. Ed has very kindly agreed to continue hosting meetings in 2021, at least for the first couple of months, at least to get us through our annual meeting and board election. Maybe after that, we'll have an opportunity to do some in-person meetings, but for now, we're going to be doing it on Zoom for at least another couple months. Thank you so much, Ed, for agreeing to do that.
I have it in my calendar for the next couple of years. I'm not going to
Well, thank you, Ed.
Just in case. Thank you.
There should be some sort of honorific anointed to Ed for his service.
I just want to see that miles when you get it moving.
All right. Calb CA100 cells.
Hey, what about talking about Calbs? What about how about the Carmen Ghia? What's the story on that?
The Carmen Ghia sits nice and pretty, though with the aid of a SEVA member, space has been created in my garage to make it a little bit easier to do some more driving on the Ghia. And I'm finally ready to order another BMS. I sold my Orion first generation BMS to a SEVA member before I installed it, so that I could get a second generation Orion BMS that would be compatible with CHAdeMO DC fast charging.
Oh, very
I'm
good.
going to add that standard into the grave. Mr. Bean has 118,000 miles and is still pulling 50 kilowatts, and he'll do that for another 10 years at least.
Yeah, did you see that Zero EV actually had a CCS? You could charge a CCS at the aftermarket, but it only worked with the Orion 2 BMS. But anyway, that Zero EV, the cost for that, for the conversion for a vehicle was something like $2,500. You know, I go, who's going to pay that? You know, but anyway.
Well, it was a $5,000 upgrade on a 2011 Leaf or a 2012 iMEV to get CHAdeMO.
Okay.
As part of the premium package, basically.
Yeah, so anyway, I know that Max or whatever, I know you guys got CCS in your business, but that's definitely it's already out there, and you definitely could come out with a better price than $2,500.
Yeah, thanks for bearing with me through that Maxwell video. SEVA saw the original Maxwell van with a Chevy Volt drivetrain 2 years ago, and our Maxwell shuttle that was not featured in the video set a DC fast charging record at 121 kilowatts a couple months ago, but now with a newer iteration of their package, one of their vans hit the 200 kilowatt mark.
Wow.
CCS DC fast charging.
Okay, and the CCS fast charging, great, great.
Yep.
Well, that's definitely something, you know, if you're looking for other applications, it's definitely something you can market.
Yeah. All right. Well, the time being 8:28, call the meeting to a close, but invite folks to hang on. Ed, you have a time that you would like to officially shut it down, or as long as Grace and I hang around to stop the meeting?
If one of you, I'll make you host when I go. It's late for me. Having started at 4 in the morning, it's getting on in my evening.
I hope it's paying clients that wake you up at 6 a.m. every day.
It's actually a training in Switzerland. And right now, because you can't travel to Switzerland, the whole damn thing's done by Zoom. And we start at 7:30 and we have prep before that. 7:30 our time is fairly reasonable for them. It's not as bad as the one coming up next month, which is in China. That runs from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not doing that one.
Yeah, well, anyway, thanks again, Ed.
Anyway, about 9 o'clock would be a good time to shut down.
How stuck we are in our time zones. All right. Hey, Mr. Fulcher, how's your Pacifica hybrid doing? Very good, excellent. I made an inquiry of Tacoma Power if they've ever resolved the incompatibility between ChargePoint EVSE and the Pacifica hybrid vans that had them disconnecting on a regular basis, but I haven't gotten an answer to that yet.
Yeah, I was pleased to find out that Ryan has kept up with his wiki records from SEVA to 2004. And I wasn't aware that that was on the SEVA page, but that's a really nice thing to have on the page, is the history of Seattle Electric Vehicle Association.
Ryan is one of our unsung heroes who continues performing duties long after his official office tenure has expired, just like Mark.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Yeah.
And just like Mark. And Mark.
Oh yeah, Mark. Yeah. Yeah, Mark's doing a good job.
Mark and Mark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, anybody else? Any ideas?
Hey, Gibran, did that ring a bell, what I said about the